Choosing the vintage or antique sewing machine of your dreams can sometimes come down to the choice between a cabinet or a portable. Which one should you go for? I'm Ollie, this is Simply Stitchy. Let's take a closer look at the pros and cons of each one. If we take a look at the machine that's in the cabinet to start with, this is Grandma. She's my Singer 27 treadle from 1912, and you'll notice that she's actually inset into the cabinet, which means that she's pretty much level with the surface of the table, meaning that she's got a large flat sewing area. And the working space itself, not only has she got a large distance from the pillar to the needle, but you've also got a large space from the front of this machine all the way through to the back. And many of these tables, like Grandma's, come with an extension leaf that give you extra space. I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, as I mentioned, Grandma here is a treadle. The actual treadle workings are also built into the table, and you'll find that even if the machine's electric and it's in a cabinet, everything's neat and tidy and enclosed within that cabinet. One of the great things about having a sewing cabinet or a sewing machine that's built into a table like this one is it's a dedicated sewing area. You can leave it set up when you need to walk away from your sewing for a bit, and you can come back to it later and it will still be there. There's no need to pack up anything to clear away a space if you need to use that flat surface like the kitchen table or the dining table for any other reason, like meal times for instance. Having a dedicated sewing cabinet like this one makes it easier to pick up where you left off, and when you can do that, there's less chance of you losing your sewing mojo. I mean, let's be honest, how many of us, when faced with that thought of dragging everything back out again, have gone, ugh, I can't be bothered. It's much easier to finish sewing projects if you can pick up where you left off. A sewing machine cabinet is also a really good safe place to store your sewing machine when it's not in use. You just literally fold it out of the way. I have to take that off, Grandma, because it'll just fall off. One of the joys of being an old sewing machine. But there's more to this cabinet than that. It doesn't just store your sewing machine, it'll also store your sewing knickknacks, your buttons, your safety pins, your snips, the grease, a screwdriver, a needle book, spare parts from a different sewing machine, bobbins, your sewing feet collection, and let's not forget the essential sewing machine oil. There's even some room in here for some old wooden spools. But the great thing about a sewing machine cabinet is even when the sewing machine isn't in use, it makes a very attractive, nifty piece of furniture. There are a few drawbacks with sewing machine cabinets. The biggest one is space. You do need to have the space that can accommodate the size of the cabinet that you've got. I mean, if you have a look at the setup that I've got at the moment, I am limited to space in this room. I'm actually in the main entranceway to my home, and you'll notice that the extension leaf is actually leaning instead of being flat, which means I can't actually use it as an extension table. And this is why it's leaning against the telly that I use to make sure that the videos are in focus. And just in front there, that's my ironing station. And if we get that cable out of the way for a moment, I pan across, you'll see, look at that. That's just some of the sewing machines that I've got in my collection. A little space just past that brown case, that's where the Singer 185 lives, which I've got ready for the next shot. We'll be getting onto that one in a moment. And just underneath we've got, guess what they are? More sewing machines and more sewing machine cabinets. And that's the thing. Sometimes you're just stuck with the space that you've got. Another disadvantage with a sewing machine cabinet is it's actually not just a cabinet, it's a flat surface. And the thing with flat surfaces is things get plonked on top of them. Like magic, out of the blue, bits and bobs will just fly towards, they gravitate to the flat surface and cover it up. Until before you know it, there's all sorts of things piled on top of your cabinet. We're back to the space issue here, only in this particular instance it's your sewing machine cabinet that's becoming a very handy space to pile the general debris of life. Another thing that you need to take into consideration when you get a sewing machine that's inside a cabinet is the very fact that it's in a cabinet is going to make that sewing machine more expensive, simply because it comes with a free piece of furniture. They're also not particularly easy to move. I mean, this one is on casters, but it's still a hefty weight to try and move. Even if you take the sewing machine out and disconnect it from the cabinet, you've still got the weight of the treadle mechanism underneath. That weight issue isn't just a problem when you're trying to move the machine from one place to another. It can be a problem when I'm actually working on a project with some size to it, like this quilt here. You'll notice that in order to get to the bottom part of this quilt, to free motion quilt it, I'm having to push the quilt upwards, so it's face planting against the window. There just isn't enough space between the table and the wall, and I can't physically move this away from the wall to make this go further back. Now obviously that's a me problem. Not everyone is going to experience the same issue as I do when I'm using this machine pushed up against the wall, but it is something that you need to take into consideration if you're thinking about getting a sewing machine cabinet. Is your ability to be able to move that cabinet or not going to have a detrimental impact on what you want to sew? The next machine that we're going to look at is this one. This is a Singer 185K and it's portable. That means that you can pick it up and carry it about. It's got its own little carry case, which just sits over the top like that. This is your sew on the go machine. With a portable like this one, it's enclosed in its own little base. You can set up anywhere and everywhere. You can go inside, outside, upstairs, downstairs, anywhere where there's a flat surface. And as you can see, I've got this one set up on top of Grandma's treadle table. And it's quick to set up too. Pop it on the table, lift the case off, plug it in if it's electric, and away you go. And because it's so easy to set up, it's also easy to put away. Unplug it, pop the lid back on, close it up, shove it in a closet. Out of sight, out of mind. I'll come back to that one. There are slightly lighter vintage sewing machine portable options, like this one. This is a Janome QC6260, and this one is in fact Jerome. And That's our new kitten that's just gone across the windowsill there. And as you can see, everything is compact. I can keep the foot pedal, the power cord within the space of the machine itself, and there's even, just here, an accessory tray where I can keep all the sewing machine bits and bobs, like the spool caps and the spare feet. And inside here, under this flip top lid, you've got the area where the thread goes. And there's also more storage for extra feet. So you can see it's neat, it's tidy, it's compact. And the key with being portable is it's small. You can extend the sewing space with these newer machines just by taking this part off and adding an additional sewing table, and that just extends the sewing space that you've got just that little bit more. Another advantage a slightly newer machine will give you is they're a lot lighter than the older ones. And now we need to get into the not so great bits about portable sewing machines. This isn't as much of an issue with modern day machines, but if you're looking at a vintage machine like this one, or even an antique machine that's built to be portable, being portable doesn't necessarily mean they're any lighter than their in-cabinet counterparts. I mean, this one must weigh close to 30 pounds, which is quite a hefty bit of weight to be carrying around with you, even in a carry case. Oh, it's a great workout for your biceps though. You remember I said one of the pros of a portable sewing machine was that you could put it in your closet and forget about it, out of sight, out of mind type of thing. Well, that's also a bit of a con. I mean, if you see down here, I've got quite a few portable sewing machines, and when I put this tablecloth down, they're out of sight, out of mind. The thing is, that's not necessarily a good thing, because if your machine is out of sight, you're less likely to use it. We're back to that, if something's too much trouble to set up, you're not going to bother. A disadvantage that machines like this one have that machines in sewing cabinets don't tend to have is this distance here. Because they're encased in their own carry case, if you like, there's always going to be a little bit of a shelf or a raised up bit that you have to get your sewing project over so that you can sew it. And there's a couple of issues with that. You're more likely to catch pins or clips on any protruding bits on the carry case, like here for instance. But it's not just that. The more humps and bumps that you have to go over to get to the needle and sew, the more likely you're going to have wonky seams. One of the great things about this portable machine is if I set it up on top of Grandma's table, a bit unorthodox, I know, but it means that I can leave it set up. If I'm sewing something on it, I can just leave it in situ, walk away and come back to it. If the only space that you have for your portable sewing machine is on your kitchen or your dining table, and you need that table for something else, so you have to put it away and then get it back out again, and then put it away and then get it back out again. Not only is that going to get very old very quickly, but it's going to have such a dint on your sewing mojo. You're not going to want to reset up every time, and that's going to impact your ability to actually finish your sewing project. One of the biggest disadvantages with a portable machine is also one of its biggest pros, and that's the fact that it's compact and it's got a relatively small size compared to a machine that you'll find in a cabinet. The sewing area on this particular machine, from here to the needle, known as the harp space, is relatively small compared to some of the larger machines that you can find in tables and cabinets, like Grandma for instance. That's quite limiting on the size of project that you can do. Take this quilt for instance that I've recently been working on. In order to get to the eagle's head, for instance, I'm going to have to roll this side of the quilt up to give enough room to get to that part of the quilt. And that in itself can be a little bit restricting, especially if you need to get further into the middle of the quilt and you end up having to roll quite a lot of it up and out of the way, because that limits just how much you can move that quilt around. I mean, obviously there is a fix for that. You can get a quilting frame which will make it a little bit easier to turn a domestic sewing machine like this one into something that imitates a long arm. Another slight disadvantage with the more portable options of sewing machine is they don't have the same level of storage space as one built into a cabinet does. I mean, Grandma has got quite a few drawers and she's got room for lots of different knickknacks. Jerome has a decent level of storage. He's got under the top lid here and in this compartment just underneath the sewing area. But even so, you can't keep any sewing machine oil with Jerome. You have to keep that somewhere else. This particular machine, the Singer 185, doesn't have any storage area at all. There's nowhere to keep your extra sewing feet, which can be a bit of a problem because accessories for sewing machines, if you haven't got anywhere to put them, are incredibly easy to lose. So now that we've looked at the good points and the bad points of both a sewing machine in a cabinet and a portable option, which one should you go for? Both options have their merits. And at the end of the day, the one that you choose needs to be the one that suits your sewing needs best. If you're the kind of sewist that likes to stay in one place and you like to have everything in easy reach and a nice expansive sewing area, then you're probably looking for a sewing cabinet. But if you like to sew on the go and have everything in a nice, compact, easy to carry option, then maybe you should go for portable. Me, I tend to have both options. I've got sewing machines in cabinets and I've got sewing machines that are portable. And that way I've got every sewing situation covered. I've also got quite a large selection of sewing machines. Let me know in the comments which option you go for and which one you prefer. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and why not go and check out some of the other videos that I've got on this channel using the links coming up on screen any minute now, or the ones I'll pop in the description box below for you. And don't forget to show your support for the channel by subscribing, by becoming a member, or even by using the super thanks button, whichever video you do go and check out next. Hope to see you back here for the next one, and in the meantime, whatever you're sewing it with, embrace your creativity and have fun. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.